Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of the group chat on the Two-Way platform. We welcome you, our community members, and we invite you to participate in our show. Please raise your hand so we can call on you and you can offer your thoughts, comments, and questions about what we're discussing. We also encourage you to leave comments in the comments available on the online platform, but please manifest our ethos of peace, love, and understanding so we don't have to mute you or get mad at you or do anything of that nature. That's a dictate from me, from Mark Halperin, and from my wonderful friends who are joining me today, per usual, Nina Turner and Emma Jo Morris. And we're also joined, our special guest of the week, Steve Olikara, who I have done Rising with on a number of occasions. So I'm really glad to have you with us. Stephen, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself? How about that?
Well, definitely my claim to fame is I've been Robby's sparring partner on Rising. But outside of that, I am a Wisconsin native. My whole politics is about bringing people together and reforming the system so it works better for ordinary people. I founded a national organization of young elected officials called Future Caucus and ran for a U.S. Senate as a Democrat in my home state of Wisconsin. I'm now a senior fellow at the Schwarzenegger Institute at USC.
Well, we are glad to have you with us. So I just came off a live stream for Reason Magazine, where I also work, that went on for 2 hours. So this is going to be my third consecutive hour of video commentary and my sixth overall today, because I did Rising this morning. So if my brain turns to mush and like melts out of my ears live on camera, I hope everyone forgives me. But we have a great show today, a lot of good subjects to get to. Things that were just in the news that we wanted to hit right off the top was that the pipe bomb suspect has finally been apprehended. This was a story that I know a lot of people online on social media paid attention to. The person who made these bombs at the DNC and the RNC that then did not detonate. And the Blaze had alleged a certain suspect, what was it, like a month ago? And that person, I guess, is innocent. That's not who they apprehended. That person is going to be, I think, suing the Blaze for like a gajillion dollars. I saw Kash Patel kind of taking a victory lap for that one. A lot of Republicans calling him out, saying, good job on this. Emma Jo, do you think Kash Patel really needed a win this week after some of the news cycles he's endured?
I mean, I'm the first, I don't know if you know this, but I'm the first Kash Patel hater.
Yeah.
I invented hating Kash Patel.
I did not know that.
You did know that?
People are turning on him. Well, there was the very silly Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's not personal. It's due to chronic incompetence. That's basically my problem here. And not only incompetence at solving like current crimes, but also the whole sell on getting this person into the job was that he had chronicled over the past, corruption and malfeasance within the FBI, and that was like the whole thing that we were excited about for him. And there's been no reform, which the FBI is desperately in need for. And then he's coming out saying silly things all the time, wearing silly outfits. It's like, can you please put on a suit and be serious for like 1 second? Is that okay? But anyway, so congratulations to Kash Patel. I hope this is the right guy, because the last time we had a serious crime, he got mixed up a couple times. And I think the time before that, he got mixed up once. So I'm glad.
He got mixed up last week when discussing the horrific shooting of two members of the National Guard in Washington, D.C., which is terrible. And one of them has died and the other critical condition.
Brutal, right?
And he was at a press conference with our mayor, Muriel Bowser, and with the relevant law enforcement personnel. And he said something like, we're going to make sure we get everyone.
We're going to find him.
And then, so then the first question for the reporter is, well, are you saying there's more people involved? What, he's going to spark a panic here. And the people who know what they're talking about had to come in and say, no, there's one person and we got that person. There was the damning New York Post story about him this week that he would not go out without wearing one of those cool FBI field jackets, and they could only find a
special jacket.
This is a game. I mean, he really does. His arrogance, first of all. Man, get briefed before you step in front of a microphone, please.
Yeah.
Just he is unqualified for the post, but I will put that in the parking lot. The least you can do, sir, is to be briefed by the experts, by the professionals within the FBI before you step in front of microphones. But he is like a kid, and he thinks this is a game. He is unserious and definitely unfit for this job. But if Emma Joe, you congratulating him, congratulations, even though he didn't do the job. He didn't do it.
He gets to take credit for it. Stephen, the premise of a Kash Patel type person, right, was that he was going to come in and this was his pitch to like me, libertarian, that this got me excited, going to make the FBI into smaller law enforcement agency, not doing a nebulous national security, deep state, whatever thing, just law enforcement, catch bad guys. And he did have, to his credit, a background as a defense personality as well, which I think is helpful for Nina. Probably agrees with me on that. I think that can be a helpful perspective for law enforcement to have seen it from the other side. But I don't, at the end of the day, it's about competence.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's a win for the FBI that they identified this person. And it seems like they used some interesting sources of information. Apparently, it was his shoes, and they contacted Nike. The only question I would have more from a civil liberties and privacy standpoint is whether their methods, and I'd be curious your take on this, Robby, whether their methods you think are agreeable. I mean, they really got some personal sort of information to be able to identify this guy, but it might have been necessary for them to actually find this guy. Related to Kash Patel wearing the jacket, I don't know, like so many people in government love highlighting their position title. But anyway, Robby, what's your take on the libertarian concern?
Well, I mean, I'm not like so libertarian that law enforcement should be thwarted from finding a suspected terrorist. I mean, it's
Robbie wants the pipe bomber to be arrested by a private police officer.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? That'd be nice. That's fine. Policing could be provided privately, but we don't have to get into that today.
Oh no, please, let's not get into that.
I mean, we do live in a panopticon where we're surveilled constantly. That's why it was so surprising that this guy wasn't caught, right? We're now all on, if you go back to what the golden age of, serial killers or whatever, they all, all our television is about Bundy and Dahmer and those people. That could have never happened today because you'd be caught on people don't hijack anymore, but you'd be caught on the security footage, and people used to get away with crimes that's just unthinkable now. It's a bad thing from the standpoint of our liberty, but it's a good thing from the standpoint of not having serial killers. I don't know. Do other people have thoughts on this trade-off? I don't like the fact that we're on camera constantly and the government has access to it constantly, but
this is literally our existential tension as Americans, not to go off piste, but rampant serial killers or liberty.
Yep, that's it. Choice.
I think in this case they subpoenaed Nike retailers in order to identify and match up his credit card information.
Yeah,
maybe we're okay with that being out there, but it is interesting. It's very interesting how they found this.
Yeah. All right, let's moving right along. Luigi Mangione trial continuing. This is obviously something that has exercised so many people on social media. He deserves. To stop him and detain him. Does anybody feel differently about it?
Well, no. I think his lawyer, I mean, I think the whole thing with Luigi Mangione, like the government really screwed themselves because they made him, first of all, they elevated the case and made it into such a spectacle that there's an argument to be made, which his lawyer is going to make, that they poisoned the well of the entire trial. Like having him walk down, I don't know if you guys remember, but having him walk down, like after being brought back to New York City, he walked down in this huge photo op with Mayor Adams, like some road in order to get him detained. with 1,000 news cameras. That like I don't understand really. And listen, I am not a Luigi Mangione defender at all, but I don't think that he is really going to be able to get a fair trial because he was essentially convicted by public opinion by the mayor who was looking for a moment for himself. And it's a shame because this person, I think, should be put to death. He executed a father on the street on 6th Avenue in broad daylight. That is like the most horrific crime, one of them that you could possibly commit. Obviously, he took somebody's life, but this is like totally screwed up. It's not fair for him, and then it's not fair for us. Justice is really for us.
Yeah, and I mean, those are great points in terms of the spectacle that the political class made of this. And they really did taint the well for this. And even no matter how it goes, the people who, I know a lot of folks saying that people, I mean, I know there are people who actually support Luigi, but I think if we dig deeper, they're not supporting necessarily, they're caught up in what he did, but there's an anxiety in this country over healthcare and people suffering and poverty and thinking that Luigi, even though, you know, wrong, murder is not only morally wrong, it's illegal, right? So he's gonna have a trial, but seeing him as some type of Robin Hood, if you will, or vindicator, you know, and the victims are the people who have to suffer under an unfair system.
I mean, we've heard that story in France.
Right, and that the
It
CEO,
doesn't like go well, despite the fact that there may be emotional reasons or
there's
something.
no justification for what he did to none. But I'm just saying, in the hearts and minds of some people on this issue, unless you're just incredibly, incredibly sick,
Oh, I hear you, but it's
I do think that
extremely
things are being conflated in terms of people's conditions and what Luigi stands for, and also what the CEO represents too on the other side of that.
Yeah, I think that, Nina, speaks to the bigger picture with the story, which is you have a cultural moment that Luigi kind of manifests, which is there's a increasing sentiment in political violence to achieve your goals. And we see, and some of my friends on the left side of the spectrum don't like to hear this, but the latest polling shows that interest in political violence has actually increased something like 10% over the last 18 months among Gen Z far liberals, I think was how they framed it. And so Luigi isn't, I don't know if he's causing an increase in that sentiment, but he sort of symbolizes that. And that is very troubling. We, of course, have issues with political violence on the political right as well. And that's something that we as a society have to confront. I mean, I think this story broke, Robby, when you and I were on the air together maybe about a year ago. And I just could not believe that there were forces you could debate how isolated they were, but forces in the political left who were celebrating Luigi and heralding him as a hero. I just couldn't believe it, but it turned out to be real. And that is something that we have to confront as a society because that kind of cultural salience around Luigi cannot be tolerated.
I don't think that it was that isolated. I think that there are large swaths of the left, and I think that it's a smaller part of the right where there is like class resentment that is like legit dangerous. Like eat the rich isn't a slogan. It's not vibes. Um, Showed that, and the widespread support for Luigi confirmed that. It's not a one-off. It's not a psycho. I mean, he is a one-off and a psycho in that he executed somebody on 6th Avenue. But the sentiment and the celebration of Luigi was, I think, legit. It was legit. And this is an incredibly toxic attitude, and it's a murderous ideology on a large scale, as we've seen in recent history.
Emma Joe, do you see a difference between that and the celebration of the people, some of the people who participated on January the 6th? I mean, even the people who government has credible evidence, they were actually convicted before the president let them all out of, defacing the Capitol, attacking law enforcement officers. I think one or two died, that kind of thing. That stuff was celebrated as well. I mean, it's not
I
an
don't think it was celebrated. I think what you're talking about was, which definitely happened, and I don't consider, like, I think it's apples to oranges, but what definitely happened was after January 6th, people got absolutely railroaded. And when you looked at what their actual crimes were, many of them were trespassing, defacing government property, and they were getting put in like the hole.
I mean,
They
they
were
were
like ripped out of their homes and put in solitary and absolutely torn apart by a triggered FBI. And people were upset. And no, I don't think that it is a comparable and at all
the
to
killing of the law
the
enforcement.
odious worship of Luigi and his violence and his demonic possession, in my
I
opinion.
would say that the United States of America has a violent past that reverberates or reveals itself every single generation.
I mean, sure, violence is horrible. I don't believe that the reaction
The,
to
the United
January
States
6th people was
uniquely has a violent past. I mean, every civilization on
Well,
Earth has a
violent, Robbie, violent. I mean, why are we acting like the founding of this country was clean? It's violent.
The founding of every country was violent.
Well, I'm talking about the United States of America, where I was born.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one of the things I don't agree with on the left. That I feel like America is often put in some category of being uniquely committed to
I don't
violence.
think so.
As like the natives lived in some
The
peaceful
human condition,
utopia
basically.
before the human condition is violent.
And the human condition, right?
Yeah.
But it is okay to critique the United States of America. What I don't like is, okay. Let's say I go with your premise of that some people talk about the United States of America as less like we're uniquely violent. Okay, I will give you that. On the other hand, people talk about the United States like we're not uniquely violent. When I hear politicians say this is not who we are, and what the hell is not? It's exactly who we are, and it's
It's not
manifested
uniquely.
in the 21st century.
Well,
I think that
we
the
want
United
them
States is
to.
uniquely peaceful.
You think the United States is? Oh, okay.
I think I want our political figures to aspire toward the lofty ideals that our founding represents, even if we've fallen short of it from time to time. I certainly wouldn't want our political leaders to say, you know what, we're a fallen species, bathed in the blood of the innocent. We should manifest that. That's like a nihilist kind of.
No. I mean, I think hope springs eternal.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them dueled it out, right? There were famous duels instead of bringing everybody else.
McCarthy kind of
Right.
kind of.
However, I think we're delusional if we don't believe that there is an impact on the past to the present and to the future and to the
On the Luigi Mangione front, I was when it all happened. It happened when Steven and I were on, and I just don't know that it's the support for him actually is ideological. Like I put his fandom in the same category as girls that were wanted to marry Manson or whatever. Like there's just always been a category of weird celebrity obsession with serial killers and reprehensible people, and I think it's just a manifestation of that because he's good looking.
Yeah, I saw there were some stray commentary that I caught online of people being like, his neck is shrinking.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that was big. That was big. I think
chair he may go.
I think one other piece of the story for everyone at home to be watching this, the general topic of political violence and violence that's coded as politically left is one of the biggest, most, I would say, influential films of this year is called One Battle After Another. There's a lot of discussion about it, glorifying left-wing political violence. Right now, the betting markets have it as the front runner to win the Oscar of film of the year. So watch that space because that's going to be a conversation over the next few months. If it wins that award and is elevated to that kind of platform, it further solidifies the cultural archetype of left-wing politically violent activist into our culture.
I haven't seen the movie, but I actually saw some people on the left complaining about it. And Nina, maybe you saw some of this. Like
I did not, Robbie.
my friend Brianna Joy Gray, I think, hated it because she thought it was discrediting of left wing activists or something. So, you know, maybe now I didn't see it, so I'm totally just speculating.
Dan told us, Dan said, it's a movie, get a grip. That's what Dan said. One of our viewers, Dan, you're right. We need to get a grip. No, Robbie and Steven, I have not seen it, hadn't even heard of the thing, but now that you mentioned it, I'll take a look at it. And I love Brianna Joy Gray.
My old co-host on Rising. We've got a comment from a community member. Chris, why don't you step forth? Hello, nice to see you. Please unmute and tell us what's on your mind. You're still muted right now.
How about now?
There you go.
Hi.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the most significant evidence of left-wing political violence is, because I think this is much ado about very little or next to nothing. And I don't think it's something that people of high intellect would really defend too strongly. So I'd like to know what the evidence of that is. And I just want to add as a comment, I think far more dangerous thing in our politics isn't left-wing political violence, it's presidential verbal violence, as supported by what he said about Somalia the other day, and some equally really ignorant racist comments I've heard from some other people I've been talking to in smaller groups recently.
Okay.
That is going to be our next
Respond,
subject. We're going to get into the
Chris?
Somalia and Tim Walz thing. Sorry, Emma Jo, go ahead.
Okay, so in order of lethality or in order of chronology, should we begin with the left-wing political violence?
Yeah, go with that first.
Okay, well, I'll start with level of lethality and the ones that stick to the consciousness first, and then I'll go down the list. Charlie Kirk's assassination, Luigi Mangione's assassination, Trump's attempted assassination, that's 2. And I'm only 6 months ago.
How is Charlie Kirk's death, assassination, an example of left-wing violence? He grew up
Are you going to purport
grew
that
up
Charlie
in a
Kirk's assassination
right-wing
was politically
household.
neutral?
He grew up in a right-wing household, from what I heard.
Well,
Meaning what?
I mean, his motivation, he might have had Republican family members, but a lot of left-wing people have Republican family members. His articulated motive for the shooting was a grievance against Charlie Kirk stemming from disagreement over
the trans
gender ideology, trans stuff. So I would, in fairness to Emma Jo, I would agree with her on that one.
Aren't there some right-wing trans people? Aren't there some closeted Republican homophobes?
Yes, there are. The Charlie Kirk assassin was a left-wing terrorist.
Yeah.
You can't know that or prove that. They're gay closeted Republican congressmen right now, I bet.
Okay, this is okay.
Yeah,
we're getting a little bit off topic here. Let's keep the show.
No, I think we're exactly on topic. You can't prove your point.
He is. As stated by the FBI, he is a left-wing.
Oh, by Cash Patel, the one you don't respect, that FBI?
Yeah, I think I agree that that's an example of left-wing terrorism.
We're not considering any validity to what we know.
Sorry, you were going in and out, Emma Jo.
So what was the Charlie Kirk assassination?
You don't have.
What is the Charlie Kirk assassination? What's the motive?
And look, even if he's one person. That's not representative of a group. That's as stupid.
Charlie Kirk getting his neck blown out on video.
That's people trying to smear 80,000 Somalis with 75 people who are in a scam.
Yeah, so that was my next.
What's that mean?
We're going to come back to that in a minute. Let's leave the.
That was kind of what I wanted to know.
It's group smearing, is my point.
Yeah,
so that was kind of what I wanted to know, but I guess we have to wrap this up. But I was going to ask you if you think that it's less violent, which apparently you do, for Charlie to have his neck blown out on video than saying mean things about a group of people.
I think it's more problematic for the president to set a certain tone than for one individual whose motivations are very fuzzy, and you can't prove for sure what his political leanings are to kill one individual. That's what I would say as a response to your question.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I just want to underscore the point you referenced this earlier, Robbie. It's hard to code these at times because if you are a a politically violent activist, whether you're on the left or right, like, are you really progressive if you're shooting people down? Are you really pro-liberty if you're shooting people down? So you can try, I know people try and track people's donations, who are they affiliated with, but I just think it's very tenuous. And it raises the larger question of what do these labels really mean? I think if you're using violence, you're shooting people to exact your political goals. I don't think you're very pro-liberty or pro-progressive.
And I always say this, that it's true that political violence is not statistically that common, which is a good that we have too much violence in this country, but politics is not one of the major motivators of violence. We don't, thankfully, see people being gunned down the way we saw Charlie Kirk gunned down or Donald Trump targeted. We don't see that a lot. Now, we've seen it a little bit more in the last couple of months. Is that the start of some really awful trajectory? I think it's perfectly fine to be cognizant of that. But the number one, people, we have domestic violence and workplace shootings and crime are the major categories of violence in this country. It's not because I hate your politics and must kill you, which is something people seem to forget a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Robbie, you and Steven really make some really great points. For me, I don't understand why. I mean, to try to get to motive, I understand that. But to the extent that some forces in this country always want us to label it as far left or far right, that in and of itself is the problem. I care about the violence altogether, and I refuse to subject myself to, if somebody committed a crime, if somebody murdered somebody, I don't care how they lean in. That might give me a little glimpse into maybe a little bit, but it's not all about, it's not the totality of that person or their motivation. I mean, we have President Trump, who's told people to stand back and stand by. Okay, we've had the president who, with Honduras, you're gonna let this dude out, but Venezuela, you're going after him. And I'm just using the president as an example. He is a representation, just like anybody else, Biden or anybody else, of kind of the American psyche. I don't think it particularly does us any good, the everyday people in this country, to get caught up on where they on the left or where they on the right. If you assassinate somebody, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Exactly.
I don't care.
Although I will say that progressive, liberal, mainstream media, whenever there is a shooter of a racist or a somehow vigilante militia background, I have to hear about how Fox News is responsible for it, or Bright is responsible for it, or I'm responsible for it, or whatever. And so now we've had a number of incidents where it's this Afghani person who did the shooting of the National Guard troop. And I agree. I don't think, from what I know so far, he had like a mental break and it is not ideologically motivated. And I am happy to say that. But I think media people who would have seized upon the opportunity to smear the right and smear Republicans, and have in all the reverse cases, are now a little back-footed. Is that fair?
I mean, that's fair, but it doesn't make it right. How are we gonna ever get out of this tailspin? Well, we're having conversations like this on the group chat to just kind of identify.
But we're normal, reasonable, rational people. It's all those unreasonable
other folks,
extremists out there. I think we've got another question, comment to take. Producers, you want to put somebody else up? Kelly, I think. Yes.
Hi, guys.
Kelly, hello. How are you?
Good. So I have I have a comment and then a couple questions related to the Minnesota fraud.
Yeah, let's go into that topic now. Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
I just have one general comment. I've been frustrated, and this is not to you guys, just in general. I feel like the conversation gets hijacked by this, is it racist? Like Donald Trump is not doing anybody any help to address the fraud by making it about his comments, right? And how, again, my opinion, I look at this and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. The amount of fraud, that the red flags were there, that spending, shot up. Minnesota as a state used to have a surplus. Suddenly they're in, budget, they're in deficit. And even though there were warnings and red flags, and you see excessive spending, it continued to happen, right? And and then too, if it's true, so from my understanding, there was the fraud, then it was not investigated properly, or and it obviously, I'm aware that it spreads over multiple services, right? But then whistleblowers came forward and they're claiming that they were persecuted and threatened. So I guess my big, in general, this to me seems like a bipartisan issue, going after fraud. But then also, Tim Walz was the VP candidate. Like, what,
Absolutely.
like, did they not? Because if you are running a state, if you're governing a state and you got this kind of fraud going on.
Well, that goes to speak to the short nature of the campaign. That maybe there wasn't time to do the right amount of vetting. I agree with you. I've been saying this all week. Can you imagine what a scandal this would have been if Kamala Harris had somehow won? That her VP was very complicit in this, in my view, and even in the view of mainstream reporting on this. The New York Times had a very devastating article this week about Tim Walz's governance and the way he handled this issue. I agree with you fully that it should be about welfare fraud, which is an appalling crime, not about smearing an entire race of people. We don't want to practice. I don't believe in collective punishment, or I wouldn't want to be looked at differently because someone in my identity group, whatever that is, has committed some crime. So I'm with you there, but it's an appalling thing that was handled very badly.
Can I just say something in Trump's defense? And I think that this is being misinterpreted and overgeneralized in an unfair way. And I'm not in the tank, and I actually care very much about language and precision. And Trump is the first person to be imprecise. But in this case, he was not. I think that the interpretation of what he said is actually imprecise. He did not at all, ever, criticize this or call it something about race. He did not. He called it something about nationality. And what that actually was a very astute, true, and deep point, not about Somalians per se, but actually about human nature, and frankly, about evolutionary truth, which is that this culture is not compatible with our culture, not their race. This would be true if this exact culture existed in a white country. Somalia happens to not be a white country. It is not about their race. He never talked about their race. He talked about Somalia. Why was he talking about Somalia? He was talking about a cultural difference between Somalians and the US. And why? Because this is an indication of social fabric being lost. It's an indication of low trust society. And it is a result of importing people who do not share common myths, who do not share a common social imagination, who do not share common values, not necessarily as a value statement, positive or negative, but as a matter of fact. And that is a matter of fact. If you, Kelly, were to show up in Mogadishu, you would feel dramatically disoriented.
Yeah.
And dramatically out of place. Of course, not because you're white, because you're from a different place.
Yeah.
And a different culture. And you grew up different and you speak a different language. You have different things that you consider normal. You have different things that you can.
But
and this is not a comment about you white. And just to thought, this is not. It is a human truth. This is not Trump being mean. This is how humans have evolved to now. Is that common thread that holds them together in these smaller subgroups, which we now call nations.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I'm
at the same time that we shouldn't, we shouldn't just lump one group of people together. The reality is of the charges that have been filed over a few of these scandals, 91% of them, or 90% were Somali American or of Somali descent. I mean, that's a relatively high percentage, or even doesn't matter, where they're from. If fraud is concentrated amongst a community, right? Whatever that community might be. But I guess, and this is where the conversation gets nuanced, because to me, I think the fraud needs to be talked about and addressed. And I don't want to lose that in the this bigger conversation. So
Yeah, but
I'll
I
just-
would be
Just
very
clear up,
hesitant
I don't
to
think that
say
it's a fraud culture. I think it's a lack of feeling
No,
of
it's-
to your fellow
yeah.
man, your neighbor.
I wasn't saying, yeah.
Play the song. Play the sock. Play the sock
which shot do you want, my dear?
with Trump. Okay, because the president did racialize this. He
Do
did.
we have that? If we have that SOT, we can play it. Sure. If we have the SOT of, I'm not sure we didn't prepare very many SOTs.
Somalian isn't a race.
I mean, it's an
That's
ethnic.
element
No, it's
element
not.
5.
Say what? I know Somalia is not a race. The ethnic nature of these people. I mean, Emma Joe, you just said that they are somehow, it's about evolution. No, if you committed a crime and you defrauded people, let's talk about your crime and not be so wrapped up in the fact that they are of Somalian descent, which, by the way, Attorney General Keith Ellison, who was interviewed several times on national media, has made it clear that about 80% of Somalians in the Minnesota community are born there. So are we going to focus in on the crime, or are we going to focus in on their ethnicity? They are not more criminal than anybody else. Convict them if they committed fraud. But when the president of the United States of America, just like what they did with the Haitian community in Springfield, just like they did there. And the president has in the past called primarily countries where people of color come from shithole countries, et cetera, et cetera. We could do a whole show on that. The president has a responsibility.
Can I ask you a question?
Has a responsibility.
What is the race of the people in Qatar, Dubai, Saudi Arabia? Are they white?
Emma Joe, we're talking about the president of the United States of America.
No, you're talking about a
who
race
knows
thing
that
and calling him a racist.
His words. Look, okay, you want to call him racist adjacent? Hell, I say the same thing about Joseph Clark. I'll say the same thing.
Not racist.
I'll say Jesus, Mary, and Joseph.
Well, but it might be. I see what Emma Joe's saying is that it's not a race. But however, you did, I think, say.
No, but the ethnicity.
Let me.
They're black.
I did say Emma Joe is
They're black.
They're actually not black.
Hold on. Is that
they're within the black
sound
diaspora.
like you said, Emma Joe, that, and
They're
I don't think I would
actually people in
concede this
Dubai.
at all. That is there something, is that like Somali culture is uniquely or more likely to engage in fraud? Maybe that's not a racial stereotype, that's a country of origin stereotype that it still seems pernicious to me, even if it is not I agree with, it's not a racial stereotype because it's a country, but it's still a country-based stereotype that is wrong, I think, because
the third world has different values around social services and taking advantage of them and
you're breaking up
exploiting them than the first world. This is true. It's a fact. It's the third world.
Even a chance to
that is not their race. Qatar is not.
But it's not their race,
world.
but it's not their race doesn't make it sound any better. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
we do still have peace, love, and understanding.
I firmly believe this is an issue about fraud. It's not a partisan issue. It shouldn't be an ethnicity issue. I think President Trump is trying to make it one. I just think we saw a similar situation with the DC shooter, the Afghan national who worked with the U.S. military and shot two members of the West Virginia National Guard. Thousands of innocent Afghans shouldn't be responsible for that behavior in the same way that we aren't holding to account millions of white people for storming the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Those kind of generalizations are extremely dangerous to make. They're dehumanizing, they're demonizing people. I think the best approach on this issue is just focus on what really happened. This was fraud. We need to know who knew about it and when. I think Governor Walz potentially looks horrible in this case. And even though he may or may not have been directly involved, he's the governor, the chief executive of the state. He needs to be held accountable to this. And anyone who is directly involved, who may or may, does involve some Somalis, should be also held to account. Let's not paint with a broader brush and say the culture that people from Somalia come from somehow are more predisposed to this kind of behavior.
That part, Stephen. Hold them all accountable. That part.
I just want to clarify one thing because Nina, you hooked onto something and seemed to interpret it in a way that I did not mean at all, and that I wasn't saying. So I just want to clarify for the record and for the sake of this conversation. When I talked about an evolutionary necessity, what I mean is over time, the evolutionary period of humanity, people have always clustered together with shared ideologies, shared myths, shared, collective histories, and shared collective worldviews and values. That is what allows societies to grow. That's all I was saying. Not differentiating between the evolution of one group versus another, but as humanity as a whole, there's different people, different groups of people in different places, and they all group together and stay together and survive based on a common culture. That's all I meant. Just to clarify.
Let's bring in Frank.
I
I think
appreciate that clarification.
has a comment to make. Frank, good to see you as always. Thank you for being with us. Let us know what's on your mind.
Well, let's see. You guys are calling this a problem with fraud. I call it a problem of governance. This was discovered years and years ago, and evidently the whistleblowers and the regulators and the administrators noticed fishy business happening here, and they were punished or something like that. And the reason that I've read may not be correct, but the reason that I read was that they were from most of the perpetrators, or the ones they identified at the time, were from the Somali community. They didn't want to offend the Somali community. This is a real problem with politics and political identity politics getting involved, and with this horrible fraud mess. And I think that's the bigger thing, because you want your government to work, for goodness sakes. So, and it does drag in the Somalis to that extent. I mean, it is an indirect thing. Now, regarding whether it's racial or country and devastated by war or Islam or whatever these things are that are not compatible and are subject to this issue or this temptation or whatever, that's one thing. But there were people charged who are not Somali, and they said the ringleader was Somali, but I don't know. I mean, what are these other people doing in this mix? So I think this is all kind of interesting. But my big problem is not so much the fraud, which should have been caught and stopped and prosecuted at the time, but it was the failure of the government to do this in order to protect, a voting bloc, and that is really disgusting.
Yeah, Tim Walz again looks, I think, really horrible from the. I mean, I have to check my bias because I was really not a fan of Tim Walz to begin with. At no point, I thought he was not a good choice to be Veep at all.
You didn't like him before this?
I really did not care for this guy, but you try to be a fair. Well, I thought he didn't add a lot to the ticket. Frankly, I thought he was not a good choice from the standpoint of Kamala Harris because he
could talk to football coaches in the Midwest. That was the whole idea.
I mean, that was his conviction that he could do that. I didn't find him. I mean, maybe he wasn't speaking to me, but yeah, I don't know. It's the fraud is very bad, and I think that again. People will be. I think the American people's faith in their willingness to help out their neighbors or to have their tax dollars go to charitable endeavors is very much undermined by this kind of looting of the commons.
Not just this. I mean, the Pentagon has failed 7 audits.
Sure.
Our faith is undermined.
Sure.
We have got to be able to admit that there is racialized differences when people are black and brown. That doesn't mean they should be left off the hook. It means that the president can trigger, and I'm not holding him accountable for anybody that wants to be a bigot and wants to use this against the Somalian people. But as somebody from Ohio who watched the horror of the Haitian community just because Vice President J.D. Vance and others racialized this, and they triggered people who are already naturally predisposed to be bigots and anti-black. That's all I'm saying. And the president, Emma Jo, and I agree with you, precise language. I think people who hold, and he's imperfect just like any other human being. Some of us are more imperfect than others in public. I believe that he has more of an obligation to not put gasoline on the fire.
Oh God, I think that this is misplaced sensitivity. Whose money is that? The people of Minnesota's money. They're hardworking people.
Well,
What
we're hard
about
work,
taking
all
defense of
Americans.
them? What about the defense of them? Are they not angry? Like, does that language
Pentagon budget. Should we be
reflect how
angry
they
about
feel?
that
Al
kind of fraud?
Shabaab, seriously?
Is this the only place where fraud and abuse goes on?
Absolutely not. And if you'll watch War Room by Steve Bannon, the podcast, you'll know that he's like screaming this far away from an aneurysm, to go across the Potomac and go empty out the Pentagon. This is the MAGA, this is part of the MAGA agenda, actually a cornerstone of the MAGA agenda is to not raise spending, especially
Oh, we lost Jim and Joe. I'm
pairing up smaller countries. This is
Yeah.
it's not one or the other, it's both. And it was appalling what
I
happened.
do think, look, Anina, I totally agree with you on the Haitian thing. That was just made up and blatant racism, 1000%. This is a little tougher because there was real wrongdoing. And of course, there's wrongdoing by people from every place and of every color. And that is true. But
Yeah.
if we had a story where there was a ton of whatever, a string of robberies, and 90% of them had been committed by people who came from Denmark in the last 30 years, there would be slightly more like unhappiness toward people from Denmark, right? Would just be the
No, not at all.
You don't think so?
Absolutely not the
I
same.
do think so. I do think so.
Not the same. Not the same.
I actually wanted to deport people from Denmark more.
Ooh,
I don't.
It's
This is
lacking.
I don't want to deport people from.
First of
I
all,
only
there's-
want to deport criminals. I want to report criminals, not people from any specific. You just want to deport everybody.
I don't connect with the culture of Denmark, actually, and I want them to be deported too.
Well, I don't either. I'm an Italian, but and my people have been smeared as criminals for 100 years. Just guy trying to make an honest living and calling us a couple of wise guys. It's
I deport the libertarians for that matter. Now that we're on the
all
topic,
can agree to beat up on the libertarians. Wow, our hour flew by today. It is coming to an end very, very soon. Do we got any other community members? We'll if anybody's got a hand raised, we'll take you now. I think I see one.
Kelly again, and we got Chris.
Kelly, come on back down.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. I think I think this is about really going after the fraud and digging into how this was allowed to happen, right? Because there is not a lot of trust in government and in our officials. And if we can't have honest conversations about what's happening, first of all, we're never going to get our deficit under control if we keep, going like this. And I just really think, to me, it seems like fraud should be a bipartisan issue. And it's just really frustrating.
Stephen, is fraud a bipartisan issue? Republicans are always accusing Democrats and Democratic constituencies of being not sufficiently motivated on this.
It depends on, I think fraud should be a bipartisan issue. Our politics is so tribal, we try and kind of shoehorn every issue into a polarization vortex, and it sort of depends on what you're talking about. I think sort of small government conservatives and the libertarians often look at Democrats for wanting a large government and their greater opportunities for corruption. At the same time, Trump has sort of mastered the art of corruption in the Oval Office. And so I think it should be Kelly, you're exactly right. And I really appreciate the way that you're approaching the Minnesota issue and beyond that. And I think we need more voices like yourself, honestly, Kelly, to help cut through all the partisan BS that's out there and get to the real issue.
Because I think your average American citizen is just so frustrated when you hear these numbers being wasted and fraud. I really don't care, how you vote, what color your skin is, what you believe. If you're a fraudster, just let's go. There's no tolerance for that, in my opinion.
Well, here's a question for you though, Kelly. So were you aware of, or does it also exercise you the fact that it maybe gets less reported that, yeah, the Pentagon has thrown away however many billions of dollars that it can account for. And, you know, maybe to Nina's point, and we're going to beat up on a group of people when our government itself is wasting money even by its own accounting, right? It has just like lost track of money year after year.
I saw that and was upset by that, just like this too. We have a large deficit. You know, I have a 9-year-old son. I don't want him to grow up in a bankrupt country. And again, the Pentagon shouldn't be wasting any money. Nobody should be wasting any money. Just because you're a Republican or a Democrat, that doesn't give you permission to waste money or and be foolish. You know, I wish there was more accountability, or maybe politicians had more financial skin in the game, right? And they don't. And so, you know, we can like that, Robby, to your point, there was a ridiculous amount of equipment, right? Was it lost or wasted, or, you know, we award contracts.
Covered by terrorists, probably.
Yeah, covered by. We award contracts because a congressman, you know, fights, you know, for their district. But at the end of the day, we have to first say, is this even, you know, equipment we need? Will it help? Right?
I think
Sorry.
one of the easiest things we can do to take on that issue is to ban lobbyists from legally bribing members of Congress. That's part of the reason why, amazingly, the Pentagon is, you know, you and multiple people have spoken to, is so bloated, has failed multiple audits, is these defense contractors have carte blanche to be bribing members of Congress. I think one of the best bipartisan issues right now is ending that system, just banning lobbyists from funding members of Congress.
And we give them more money every time. I mean, that's quite a gig.
To
Hey,
me,
Robby, can we get Chris in here one more quick time?
I'll just say quickly, that's unacceptable that they're failing
I just
lobbyists.
one thing that
Yeah.
really is
If Chris has his hand,
speaking, I have one thing that's coming to my mind. Perhaps it's policy, which is
we
you can't hear me.
You're going in and out, Emma Joe. Sorry, we keep.
Sorry, I was just going to say the policy solution that comes to mind as Kelly is speaking, and actually as Stephen is speaking too, is like, if there is a percentage of fraud that's found, like based on your budget, whatever the fraud is found, the percentage of your budget, you have to pay it retroactively from your paycheck. So like if you find five years after you leave office that there was, 4% of your budget was fraud that year, 1 year of your term, you have to pay 4% of that money back.
I'm all for that. All right, Chris, my friend, we got about 2 minutes. Hit us.
Oh, I'm known for being able to make really good points in about 60 seconds.
Great.
Time me. I agree with Kelly that fraud is a problem. The real problem here, though, is that we couldn't stay on the fraud issue in this country and not in the White House. It had to seep over into and then reveal all this cultural crap trying to smear a group of people. Some of the comments we even heard today trying to suggest that there's something uniquely negative about a group of people. When Bernie Madoff did what he did, we didn't say deport all the Jews. When Charlie Kirk said some of the stuff he said about black stuff, we didn't say deport everybody like him. So I'd like to just say these attempts to castigate a group of people who are mostly living very peacefully in Minnesota because 75 people participated in the fraud. How about all those people who participated in the fake electors? Let's deport all of them, which means, Emma Joe, I think a lot of them look like you.
All right. Peace out, guys. I'll see you in Montreal. Thank you for your comments, Chris.
I mean, those people did get, I don't know. I am familiar with plenty of bigotry against Jewish people for their involvement in the political system.
No one ever says things about Jews in general.
But all right, thank you very much for your comments, and thank you for all of our community members' comments. We really had a excellent and spicy conversation today, which I appreciate. I hope my own comments were not totally incoherent because, again, this was hour 6 of my daily commentary. But as always, this is the group chat. We will be back next week. I think it's not yet Christmas, right? We will probably be back next week.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to see you then. Thank you all so much. Stay tuned for more group chat. We'll talk to you later.